Okay, so good afternoon. I think I should go ahead and get started. Nobody told me, but okay. Thank you for coming over. Hopefully, you already had lunch. You can just relax for 20 minutes, and I'll take you through a fun demo of Serverless and OpenWhisk. And hopefully, while we relax and enjoy, we can also learn a couple of things about the platform. So my name is Chanakya Lokam. I'm from Miracle Software Systems. We're a global systems integrator based out of Detroit, Michigan. And we basically are an IBM partner that helps customers in terms of these next generation technologies. I myself am a technical developer. I also head our research labs unit, and I'll be talking a bit about some of the use cases that we've been working on around OpenWhisk and how they've been helping us help our customers. So a quick overview of what I'll be covering. I'll be talking about what serverless is, how we came to the serverless point, what OpenWhisk is, what some of the use cases are. I'll show you a quick demo of an image processing pipeline as well, and maybe compare some of the costs around what you can do with serverless versus whatever you're doing today. And I'll also be talking a bit about a chatbot that we built on top of serverless also. So everybody knows the story. Just as you look at it, we've seen this curve or this change from bare metal moving over to virtualization with VMs and everything, and then slowly moving over to the cloud, right, where we're able to scale up, create these instances rapidly. But that wasn't enough, so we started talking about containers and then platform as a service with people like Cloud Foundry and OpenShift coming up, and actually giving developers more abstraction. And if you look at it, even more than enterprises being able to scale rapidly, the focus has been a lot around the developer experience, right? For developers having to fight with the operations people, any operations people, please do not feel bad, but for having to fight with the operations people and actually having to create those instances and deploy their applications, we've moved to a stage where with a platform as a service, you just deploy your applications rapidly, right? But still, there's a lot of things that the developer or the operations has to manage even on a platform as a service because you have to know how many instances you have to run, you have to know what the load is, you have to keep on monitoring it, you have to manage that platform as a service as well. And that still is a hassle for a developer, especially a lazy one like me. So if you start looking at serverless, it really abstracts us even a layer higher, where you're talking about just deploying your code. You're not worrying about whether a server is running or not, whether a container is running or not. You don't worry about how many instances are running. You basically just say, okay, I need this service running, and the platform will make sure that it's running for you. It'll make sure that it's scaling for you, and it'll make sure that it's managed for you. Okay, and we'll be talking a bit about how OpenWhisk enables that. So this is the definition of serverless on Wikipedia. So they define it. It's also known as functions as a service. So they basically define it as compute that is available without having to basically start or stop anything or having to worry about what is running underneath the your application, right? So OpenWhisk. OpenWhisk is an open source project. It was created by IBM and Adobe, and it is now part of the. It is an Apache Incubator project as well as of today. And basically, it allows you to create these serverless functions or actions, as they're called, in OpenWhisk. You can also chain them together into sequences. So, and we'll be seeing that with our image processing pipeline in a minute. You can actually create a pipeline or an orchestration of these services together in whatever structure you want, right? And you also have triggers and rules. So the main thing behind serverless is we're not creating actual REST-driven APIs. We can do that. But the main intention is for these to be more event-driven. Okay, so if you're trying to place a message into a queue or data into a database, or maybe there's something that crashed on your mobile app, you can trigger these functions or these actions that are spawned right there, right then, and then killed afterwards, just for that specific event. Okay, so OpenWhisk is available on Bluemix as a fully managed service. Please do check it out. Also, it supports a ton of different languages, including Swift, Python, Node.js. And if there is a language outside of these that you want to try out, like Go or Scala or whatever language you're comfortable with, you can still put it on a Docker container and deploy a Docker container onto OpenWhisk as well. So in terms of developer experience of how the developers interact with the platform, if you're deploying the open source version anywhere on-prem or anywhere that you want, you can deploy it on OpenStack. We are running it on OpenStack actually internally. You can deploy that and you can use the command line to create these actions, invoke them, test them, do whatever you want. There is an API gateway that's coming out for OpenWhisk, I believe next week or so, but you can still use any other API gateway like API Connect as well to expose your OpenWhisk sequences as REST APIs if you would like to do that. You can also, within Bluemix, you also have a UI-based development environment where you just basically put in your code, you hit make it live. It's as simple as that. With Node.js, which I was developing with, you have built-in libraries that are there. If those libraries are not available, you can zip them up and you can push them through the Whisk CLI, which is a CLI-based tool also. So a couple of properties of these serverless services that we have, whether it's OpenWhisk or any other platform, is that one is the consumption model. These could be REST services that you're consuming, or they could be event-driven actions that are being created on the flow. All of them are stateless, which means that they can pass data from one to another, but they do not know what happened before them, either in their own instance or in a different process as well, right? So they're only created at that particular moment for that particular action, and after that they're gone. So other than that, they're also very, very narrow-minded, and that's with any microservice architecture. You have to focus on what exactly the service is going to do. If you're thinking about building the entire web backend for an application into one service in OpenWhisk, that would definitely be a failure. Could you do it? Yes, you could, but that would be a failure for sure. So these are very, very business-minded for reusability so that you can reuse these actions across your applications, right? And you also want to make sure that they're short-running, which means that any process, like if you're trying to crunch a petabyte of data, don't use OpenWhisk. That's not a good use case. Good use cases, which I'll cover in a moment, would be stuff like cloud automation. What happens if your instance fails? Do you have an API that you can trigger so that you can quickly put up another instance, or maybe you could diagnose what the problem was and alert an admin, maybe make a phone call to him or send him a text message? Also, we're seeing a lot of data pipelines. And in terms of data pipelines, I don't mean the analytics piece, but actually the ETL piece of being able to gather any sort of media or any sort of data, be able to transform that data through these pipelines. And that could be a trigger either on a NoSQL database like Cloudant. You could be dropping a message into a topic on Kafka, like within Message Hub, and you could trigger these ETL pipelines to actually take that data, process it, and put it in whatever data store you want to do. And we'll be checking that out in a minute. Also, some of the use cases that we're seeing around OpenWhisk or serverless are around absolutely building these backend services for mobile and web, and also for chatbots also. So if you're trying to build any of these interfaces, OpenWhisk or serverless would be a great use case for these, especially with us moving towards application development around Angular, React, and all these client-side frameworks. OpenWhisk would be that great platform that could sit behind your applications. So I have a quick demo. I'll show it to you in a minute, but this is the architecture of that demo. So we have an image processing pipeline, and basically the need was we had to take these images, compress them so that they didn't lose quality, but they were as high as a size as they were coming through in from the mobile apps, and then being able to actually take these images, give them to Watson Visual Recognition, get the actual recognized metadata, and then push that into IBM's Cloud Object Storage. The problem that we had was when we were running this on a node server as a regular REST API, it was taking about 5 to 5.7 seconds for a 1 MB image to be processed and responded back to the customer. Okay, you could still do this on a node server using something like web workers or child processes, but still that would be a lot of runtime usage that you would be using. And if you were to say that the customer is just going to wait on their mobile app for 5 seconds for your image to be processed, you're totally wrong. Okay, 5 seconds will seem very, very low when you think about it, but if you're actually using that, 5 seconds is a lot of time for a user. So what we did is we created a delegated worker model with OpenWhisk, where any image that is coming into our node server is being dropped into a Message Hub topic, which is Kafka basically, and that is the event trigger that we're triggering. We're pulling out that message, processing the image, and the user is already gone. He's already submitted the image. He doesn't care about it. Whenever the image is processed, we just notify him back using, in our case, we use Twilio, but OpenWhisk also supports push notifications also natively as a service. So if you wanted to use that, you can set a push notification through the app also. So I'll quickly showcase. Okay, there we go. So this is a quick demo of the image processing pipeline that I was talking about. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do is we built a Ionic-based application that retrieves the images from IBM Cloud Object Storage. Whatever image we want to store, we basically store it through this application, and you will see the way the user interface interacts with it. I'll say test image, and I'll upload an image from the gallery. And let's take Superman for example. I'll say done. So the moment I hit upload image, it's just going to upload the image, and I'm out of the, or the user within the mobile application is not going to have to actually wait for it. We might have to wait for it because of the internet speed, but you can see the image was already stored, and it's still saying processing. So in the back end, if you can see on the left-hand side where we have OpenWhisk running, so I got a message also saying that it was classified. So if you can see on the left-hand side, there were a couple of actions that were triggered by OpenWhisk. So the first one was retrieve message, and we'll just take a look at what's happening within the pipeline. So basically, the moment I submitted an image, it put a message into Kafka or Message Hub, and that triggered this sequence of actions. And you can see the times also that I mentioned over there. We did this about 15-20 times, so it's not a huge sample set, but those are kind of the average times that we were seeing when we were sending images of about size 1 to 1.5 MB was the size that we were looking at to this pipeline. So you can see the message is retrieved. We are retrieving the image from object storage. We're processing it in terms of the compression and the Watson visual recognition. We're taking the visual recognition results and we're storing it into the metadata in object storage, and then we're updating the user using Twilio. So there's 4 actions, and this takes about 5.7 seconds-ish. Now the cool thing with OpenWhisk is if you're trying to run it, if you actually look at the actual run times of how much time it's taking for this pipeline, it's actually closer to maybe 4.7 to 5 seconds, which means that you have about 1 to 0.7 seconds of time extra on your pipeline. And that time is essentially, in milliseconds, the time that it's taking to spawn each of these actions and then kill them as well, right? So the cool thing about OpenWhisk, though, is the way Bluemix prices its model, you are not charged for 5.7 seconds, you're only charged for 4.7 seconds. They do not charge you for the time that it takes to start and stop these containers where the actual actions are running. So if we go deeper into the actual sequence, if we were to, the way OpenWhisk is priced is gigabytes per second. So if you take that together, we took 64 MB, 256 MB, 256 MB, and 128 MB. So the easiest way to calculate it would be combine your overall memory and then divide it by 1 gigabyte and then times the seconds that it runs. That'll give you the cost that it, or the units, and you multiply that by whatever the cost is per gigabyte second, right? So we did all that calculation for you, and basically if you were to run 50,000 images through this image processing pipeline over, let's say, 7 days, your image processing pipeline would only run for 250,000 seconds, right? Because it's only taking 5 seconds per image to be processed. Would you have to be worrying about the scaling? No, you don't care about it. It will scale. So 50,000 images, and that would cost you about 93 cents for those 50,000 images, right? And this could be 50,000 all at once, 50,000 across the week, 50,000 at night, 50,000 at morning, anytime, and it would be able to scale up and process your images, okay? Versus if we were to run this pipeline as a set of services or as one single server, I'm not even talking about a VM, I'm just talking about running it on a node runtime, like a platform as a service runtime. It would cost you approximately $23 just to run one instance of this pipeline on Bluemix or any other platform. It will be very similar for 1 week. That's 7 days, right? And the reason, and we're not even taking into consideration having to put 3 instances for high availability. So if your pipeline goes down, you're going to have to lose images that are coming in. Whereas in OpenWhisk, you won't. That failure will be handled for you. So I have about 4 minutes. So just to finish off. So we were building a chatbot for one of our customers, and we were also building one chatbot for our internal team as well, called Mira, for our website. Mira stands for Miracle Information Retrieval Agent, and we're actually building that for our website. It's going to be coming out next month, so check that out on our website. But when we were building that, we were kind of looking at how we can bring in OpenWhisk into this to reduce our costs, because obviously we didn't want to spend too much, but we wanted that experience for our customers. And we started looking at the image processing pipeline and how much it could save for us. So we started decomposing whatever we built up to that point in Node.js into these individual services to serve these multiple channels, right? So in this case, we have Twilio, we have Facebook, we have a chat app as well, which is built in Ionic. And all these different interfaces use some common services. So we built all those common services. The ones that you can see in the dark blue, conversation init, context check, and all those are the generic services that are used by all the chat channels. Versus you have some of the other colors like the light blue, the red, and whatever the other blue is called. And those are for the specific channels that you have to use. And you can basically just, when you're chatting using mobile, essentially your Facebook channel is not even operational, so you don't even have to worry about paying for that. So it takes down the cost a lot. And the second thing that is there is you can actually chain together all these, as I was talking about, in a sequence. So we have 3 sequences running over there, but each sequence is reusing a lot of the services from other actions that we've created. So for instance, the get conversation, I think I have a slide for this as well. Yeah. So these are all the services or microservices that we built within our chatbot. The number indicates how many sequences it's being used for, right? So all the dark blue ones, which are generic, are being used either twice or thrice. Twice means they're being used for Twilio and Facebook. Thrice means it's being used for the mobile application as well. The one which says log conversations and send MQTT at the bottom is for an IoT use case, actually. And the reason why we say N is because the way the chatbot is built is only some instances have to send messages over MQTT to our IoT devices. So that's why it says N over there. But basically, just to conclude with the last minute that I have, you can essentially create these microservices-based applications really, really quickly using a platform like OpenWhisk or any other serverless platform. And essentially with Bluemix, you get a managed service, so that you don't really have to worry about having to actually manage and scale up the platform. It'll do that for you. So thank you so much for spending your time. I hope it was insightful for you. Any questions that anybody has? Awesome, perfect. Thank you so much.